Good everyone and welcome to this video. Today we have another episode in the Should You Talisman series, and today we have the American M24 Chaffee. Now of course my opinions of the ranks and everything, like the Japanese one being rank 3, I think the Italian one's rank 3, I don't remember, but this video will count for all the Chafees available in the game at the moment. This includes the Thunder League one, which I don't have and I really wish I did, the Japanese one, the Chinese one, and the Italian one. So think of this as sort of like a universal M24 coverage, not just the American system. They're all the bloody same. It's just, they fight in different tech trees. So without further ado, in the description below, there are a link to a few timestamps. And as per usual, you can skip ahead if you wish to do so. If you want to just skip ahead to the hangar section overview, where we'll cover the vehicle's armor, mobility, and the firepower. If you want to skip ahead to the test drive, where we take a look at the vehicle. And if you want to skip ahead to the competition and conclusion, again, feel free to do so. Without further ado, let's get in and discuss the M24 Chaffee. So as I said, this vehicle is available in 4 tech trees. It is available in the American tech tree, the Japanese tech tree, just here at rank 3, the Chinese tech tree in rank 2, and the Italian, which is there, and I thought it was rank 3, I can't remember. As you'll see, the fact that it is in 4 different nations, with 2 of them having rank 2, which still doesn't make sense to me, and 2 of the nations having them at rank 3, it is possibly best to just go for one that's at rank 3. If I was to personally suggest the one to really go for, I would say the Italian M24. It does have a good lineup to back it up, especially with the Hungarian tanks now in the game. And it does have a pretty solid overall ability to make use of its rank 3 status. The thing is, though, the American one does actually have a superior lineup, in my personal opinion, due to the cast potential and anti-aircraft potential. And also the fact that every single American tank has a 50, which is always nice for dealing with light stuff. Of course, you can use a cheeky little, I call it an exploit, it's not really an exploit, but you can obviously take the M24, you can put in the Shermans and everything, M10, etc. And then if you want to use it for rank 3 tasks, you just put in a King Cobra or something similar, like the early P51 with the Hispanos, or if you obviously have the A6M Premium or the P47, you can obviously do that. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into the weaponry, armor, and mobility of the M24. Which shouldn't come as a surprise, this thing doesn't have a huge amount of armor. Now, there are parts which can bounce on occasion, such as this transmission plate here. This can sometimes, if they hit at an awkward angle on the outer edges, this can cause a bounce, as it is double layered and it's about 50mm in parts. This won't save you all the time, and it's only really affected like a couple of outcomes for me, but I wouldn't really go into depth about it. The turret front is 38.1, so again, don't expect to be bouncing a whole lot. There are a couple of bits that overlap, so you can maybe bounce a shot off the gun mantlet, but I would not rely upon that. This isn't what the Chaffee's about. Same with the side armor. In parts it's 25, same on the side of the turret, but then of course the rear part is 19.5, the rear of the turret is 25.4, and the rear of the tank is 19, with the roof armor on the hull being 12.7 to 10mm, and the roof being 12.7, with the exception being the commander's hatch. So overall, the armor is not obviously what you're really looking to play this tank for. It's never been about its armor. It's about both the firepower and its average, I'm going to call it, mobility. So let's take a look. So first of all, the mobility. The vehicle is powered by actually 2 engines, which is interesting. However, if your one engine is to somehow only get hit, the game classifies it as both engines. You can't lose one engine and keep driving and stuff like that. That's not how it works. Because if so, a lot of the Russian early tanks and the Chaffee and the M5 would also be able to drive with just one engine, albeit not very slow, or not very fast, but you get my point. 296 horsepower, propelling the 18.5-ton tank to a top speed of 35 miles per hour. Not the best in terms of its power to weight ratio, and you will feel that, especially stock, but its overall mobility is not too bad. With a top speed of 35, as I said, with an 8-speed transmission, and a rearward speed of 14.4 with 4 gears in reverse, which I'd love to know who designed that gearbox, because 4 reverse gears just seems a bit overkill, but, you know, I'm not a transmission designer myself. But still, the vehicle itself does have 48 rounds of potential ammunition. It is very unlikely you'll get ammo racked in a Chaffee. That isn't the cause of your deaths, 99% of the time. It'll be crew death in this thing, because here's one that I'm sure you veteran players might remember. Do you guys remember when the Chaffee only had 4 crew members? This guy didn't exist. You'd take one shot to the turret and be dead. It took years for him to be added. And whilst he may not have much use since the bow gun doesn't exactly fire, having an extra crew member is always nice. Coming back to the main weaponry, we do have a coaxial 30 cal machine gun, which isn't going to do much. But we do have the infamous Mardus up here, a 12.7 M2 Browning machine gun with 400 rounds available to it. And of course we have the main gun in the tank, the 75mm M6 cannon, which is a slightly redesigned M3, and it of course does have the vertical stabilizer with a reasonable turret traverse of 22.6 on my current crew. Obviously, expert and ace qualifications will obviously benefit the tank. This is also the same for the other nations, as they are all the exact same vehicle. One last thing to note is up here on the turret roof we do have a smoke grenade launcher. This is pretty solid and can definitely get you out of a tight spot if needed. The gun itself does carry a few shells, such as the M61, which is going to be your main round the moment you unlock it. Trust me, bum rush this round, it'll make the stock round a lot easier. You then, of course, have access to M48HE. You only need to carry a couple of these. You don't really need to overly use the HE. And I would recommend carrying a couple of smoke, just because smoke shells can definitely make a difference, especially when you are dealing with some of the targets that you can potentially do. And not only that, having smoke shells just makes it a lot more versatile, because you can smoke up enemy sniping spots or locations where they're likely to come from. And you can sneak into a position, turn off the engine, and hopefully they don't see you, which is very useful to say the least. But that is the hangar section overview of the M24, aka the Armour weaponry mobility. And it's not too bad. Like I said, the characteristics of the tank do fall short in some areas, i.e. the mobility, the armour in most, if not all places, but that's for a light tank, that's to be expected. But obviously the mobility can affect this vehicle, especially when stock. As you'll see, I'll just take off the engine mods for you, just to demonstrate. You can see there, 262 horsepower with an 18.4 ton weight. Makes the power to weight ratio a lot worse overall. But obviously, with it having the engine upgrades, it does help it out a lot more. So try to focus on getting the mobility if you really want to make this tank work. Without further ado, let's get into a test drive and take a look at how the vehicle does. See you shortly. And welcome to the test drive. So, let's get underway. You'll notice immediately the acceleration. It's not the best, and its turning does affect the vehicle quite considerably. Most of the time you're going to be at around the speed we are now, around about 20 to 25 miles per hour. On roads, you obviously can get this thing quite comfortably to around about 30, but yeah, don't expect this thing to be the world's greatest. You'll notice how the tank can struggle, especially at lower RPM, to actually get itself around, but you'll see the reverse speed just is really nice and really benefits the tank. And now you can imagine this by loading, well obviously that would be a smoke shell if I needed to escape something, but you can see how having grenades like so and then firing at a position to reverse in and you can blind someone definitely helps the tank out a lot and really benefits it. Obviously when it comes to post penetration damage, yeah, this shell packs a punch, as we've covered before in this series. It is a devastating shell, obviously. It's not going to pet everything, that's not the real point of that. And not only that, we're a light tank, we're trying to support the team as much as we can, whilst being effective in our combat role anyway. And like I said, it's the fact that this gun, whilst it does have its flaws, the fact that when it comes to light vehicles, we can just do that is very nice, to say the least. But obviously, it's important to note that the reactionary mobility of the Chaffee is quite low. The vertical elevation speed is also quite low. And it can really affect this vehicle's overall combat effectiveness. But obviously, that's where you have to really make this tank work in its positioning. Positioning makes this vehicle work. And like I said, the mobility is not the best. And whilst it may be a solid tank with M61, the stock grind, if you're stock grinding this thing and putting a talisman on it, especially in like Japan and Italy, is really going to hurt. And you can just see, like, whilst the shell is obviously I aimed poorly there. Whilst the shell is very effective in its own right, having the 50 just makes such a big difference in its attacking power. It's sort of like having a... Like, this tank is like a Swiss Army knife. It can pretty much do everything, but you just gotta know how to use it. It's one of those kinds of jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none kind of tanks. And that's exactly what it needs to be played as. And you can just see, like, the stabilizer is very effective at keeping it stable. You can even set it to CC1 as I'm doing here, and the gun will be very stable. Obviously, coming to a stop, it is not recommended to hit the brakes. I'll demonstrate this in a second. But obviously, after a certain speed, the stabilizer does turn off, because obviously it isn't a fully advanced stabilizer. But watch the front of the tank. The front of the tank dips quite considerably, which can affect your shot. Now, luckily, the tank stabilizer does kick in as you hit the brakes, but it's important to know that the gun will still go down before locking into position. If you can master this behavior, though, this tank will definitely do a lot of work for you, no matter the tech tree. Without further ado, let's head back to the hangar and discuss this vehicle's competition. See you shortly. And welcome back to the hangar. So, as I mentioned, this vehicle doesn't really have a huge amount of competition because of how effective it can be. As I said in the test drive bit, this tank is a bit like a Swiss Army knife. It can do pretty much everything that you need it to do, but it may not be the best in every single way. And that's pretty much the way the Chaffee works. Now, obviously, I'm not going to talk about the Chafees in the other nations, because that's not the point. I'm going to mainly talk about the US one. And the reason for that is because the US one doesn't really have much competition in itself. Neither do most of these nations bar Italy, and even then that's the Hungarian tanks pulling their weight. In terms of mainline competition, you're really looking at stuff like the M4 and the M4A1, maybe the M4A2. This tank recently got moved to rank 2, which I was very sad about because I used to take this tank as my main spawn. And because 5-0 matches weren't really that common, this thing would seal club quite well. And obviously it had a smoke grenade added, which most of the US tanks don't actually have, which is quite sad. All the Shermans, as far as I know, should have them, but that's guiding for you. But to me, personally, the M4 is a pretty solid vehicle. I still enjoy these things to this day. And not only that, out of all the Shermans they could have picked for the War Thunder Mobile, they chose the regular M4, which, again, if you can bring this tank, if you have it, obviously I don't, because I don't have the mobile app, or the mobile game anyway, and it's just one of those things where, like, you have such a versatile tank that is also like a Swiss Army knife. You just take a little bit more armor and a bit better survivability in exchange for the mobility that the Chaffee kind of matches the Sherman, but has a better top-end speed. In terms of other vehicles, there is obviously the M5A1, which is a little bit lower, has a better lineup in overall capabilities. Because if we scroll up to the top here, you do have obviously the Tank Destroyer, the AA, the other AA. the one of the best AAs tier for tier, in my personal opinion. And if you want to bump it to rank 3.0, I should say, you have the M4A3. And for a tank destroyer, the only option at the minute is the M10. It's very unlikely we're going to see the M10A1 in game, but well, that's Gaijin for you. They don't like to give us new toys. But I digress. So my conclusion is this: no matter the nation that you have a Chaffee in, this is a very solid vehicle. It has the capability of doing pretty much anything that you need it to do, other than the heavy tank role, obviously. But the fact is, this tank can do a lot. It can really do a lot in its overall capabilities. And most importantly, there's nothing really remotely wrong with this vehicle's characteristics. It's one of those vehicles where you can just look at it and say, yeah, this can do pretty much whatever I want. It can cap points, it can get assists, it can scout, it can do pretty much anything. And once you get M61 shot in the respective tech trees that you have it in, this thing will be clapping a lot of cheeks as long as you play it properly. Obviously, nations like Japan, they don't really have a great lineup. Like, they do have now the Chinu at rank 3, which is a nice little upgrade. But nations like China have really solid rank 2 lineups for it. And Italy obviously has the Terrans to back it up, and the Zarigni, and other tank destroyers, medium tanks, etc. to back it up. And like I said, it's one of those where like you can just take a tank that is effective in most roles and really just show how good this tank can be. Anyway, that's it for the US side of the tanks. So, as to be expected, we are going to be moving on to Germany. Luckily, there isn't really anything huge in terms of Germany, but if we go over to Germany, we'll be starting off with vehicles like the Panzer IV-C. It will probably be the Panzer IV-C. Like, I put it down there, but I haven't decided yet. But even then, we're going to start off with this and work our way up, and eventually hit something that is a bit iconic, but also a bit of a tank that I need to have a word about. But anyway, I'm going to leave you all to it for today. I really hope you enjoyed seeing the M24 Chaffee featured as part of the Should You Talisman series. And of course, we will be moving on to Germany. Probably going to be the Panzer IV-C, just because it's one of the better vehicles to start off with. And without further ado, I'm going to leave you all to it for today, and I'll see you all on the next one.